The forest ranger lived alone in a small wooden cabin deep inside a protected national forest. During winter, the roads disappeared under snow, and no visitors came. His nights were long and quiet. The only sounds were the wind moving through tall pine trees and the soft creaking of the cabin as it adjusted to the cold. Each evening followed the same routine. Before nightfall, he checked the perimeter, ensured the doors were secure, and added logs to the stove. The fire warmed the room slowly. Outside, darkness settled gently between the trees, covering the forest in calm silence. Snow fell steadily, without urgency. It softened every sound, creating a feeling of deep isolation. Inside the cabin, the ranger sat near the window, watching snowflakes drift downward. There was no need to think ahead. The night required nothing from him except presence. The stove crackled quietly, filling the room with steady warmth. Shadows moved slowly along the wooden walls. The ranger breathed evenly, relaxed by the familiarity of the sounds. He had spent many winters here, and each one taught him how peaceful stillness could be. Outside, the forest rested. Animals were hidden, trees stood motionless, and the wind slowed. The ranger wrote a few lines in his logbook, noting the temperature and weather. His handwriting was unhurried. Time felt wide and forgiving in the quiet cabin. When the wind picked up, it moved gently across the roof, never harsh. The cabin responded with soft wooden sounds. These noises were comforting, reminders that the structure was strong and steady against the cold night. The lantern light created a small circle of brightness in the room. Beyond it, shadows remained calm and unmoving. The ranger leaned back in his chair, allowing his thoughts to slow naturally. Nothing needed attention. Everything was already in balance. Hours passed unnoticed. The fire remained steady, the snow continued falling, and the forest stayed silent. The ranger felt his body grow heavier, supported by the quiet rhythm of the night surrounding him. Sometimes he stood by the door, listening carefully. Only the wind answered. No footsteps, no distant sounds. The forest was calm, and that calm spread inward, settling deeply into his breathing. The cabin smelled faintly of wood and smoke, familiar, grounding scents that reminded him he was safe and sheltered. Outside, the cold could not reach him. Inside, warmth and quiet filled every corner. Snow pressed lightly against the windows, forming soft patterns. The ranger watched without focus, letting his eyes relax. The simple movement was enough to hold attention without effort. He added another log to the stove. Sparks rose briefly, then faded. The fire returned to its gentle rhythm. The sound blended perfectly with the distant wind, forming a peaceful background for rest. The ranger's breathing slowed. In and out, slow and steady. The forest outside matched this pace, unmoving and patient beneath the snow. There was no clock on the wall. Time did not matter here. Night unfolded at its own pace, without pressure or expectation. The chair creaked softly as he adjusted his position. He wrapped himself in a thick blanket, feeling the warmth settle around him. The night continued, unchanged and calm. Wind moved through the trees again, slightly stronger this time. The sound traveled gently through the forest, never sharp, never alarming. Just movement, passing by. The ranger allowed his eyes to close for a moment. The sounds remained: fire, wind, distant silence, all steady, all familiar. Nothing required his attention. The cabin was secure, the forest was quiet. Sleep approached naturally, without being invited. The night grew deeper, but nothing changed. Snow continued to fall at the same gentle pace. The ranger remained still, listening without effort. The forest felt vast, yet calm. He was only a small part of it, resting quietly within its steady presence. The fire softened slightly, its sound becoming slower and quieter. The ranger noticed without concern. He knew the warmth would last through the night. There was no need to check the stove again. Everything was already taken care of. Outside, tall pine trees stood close together, shielding the cabin from stronger winds. Snow rested on their branches, unmoving. The forest appeared frozen in time, peaceful and undisturbed. Inside, the ranger shifted gently, adjusting the blanket around his shoulders. The fabric was heavy and warm. His body relaxed further, sinking into the chair as the quiet continued uninterrupted. The lantern flickered softly, casting slow-moving shadows across the walls. These shadows felt familiar, almost comforting. They moved without urgency, following the steady rhythm of the fire. Breathing became deeper and slower. Each breath felt full and unforced. The ranger no longer focused on thoughts. Awareness faded into simple presence, guided by sound and warmth. Snow pressed gently against the cabin door, forming a silent barrier. The outside world felt distant and harmless. Inside, the space remained protected and still. Occasionally, a branch released its weight of snow, creating a soft sound in the distance. It never startled him. The forest was simply adjusting, settling further into rest. The ranger allowed his eyes to remain closed. Light and shadow continued without him watching. There was nothing to miss. The night moved forward calmly on its own. Time passed unnoticed. Minutes blended into one another. The absence of clocks allowed the mind to let go completely. The night belonged to itself. The stove released a gentle pop, then returned to silence. Warm air filled the cabin evenly. The ranger's hands rested loosely, relaxed and still. Outside, the forest remained unchanged. Snow fell, trees stood, wind moved slowly between them. Everything followed a simple, natural rhythm. The ranger felt no urge to move or think. His body rested fully, supported by the chair and the calm environment around him. The cabin held the warmth carefully. Walls, floor, and ceiling worked together quietly. The structure felt reliable, steady, and secure. Breathing stayed slow and even. Each exhale released remaining tension. Nothing demanded attention. Nothing needed correction. Snowfall softened further, becoming almost silent. The forest seemed to pause, as if listening to its own stillness. The ranger rested between waking and sleep. Thoughts drifted without forming. Awareness became lighter, less defined. The night continued peacefully. The cabin remained warm. The forest stayed calm. Rest deepened naturally. The fire continued to burn quietly. Its light was softer now, slower. Shadows barely moved. The cabin felt wrapped in stillness, holding the night gently. Outside, the forest no longer felt vast. It felt close and protective. Trees stood together, sheltering everything beneath them. Breathing remained slow and steady. Each breath required no effort. The body rested fully, supported by warmth and silence. There was no reason to stay awake. The night was calm, the cabin was safe. Nothing waited to be done. Snowfall became lighter, almost unnoticeable. The forest settled deeper into rest, unchanged and patient. The ranger no longer noticed individual sounds. Fire, wind, and silence blended into one soft presence. Thoughts faded before fully forming. Awareness softened. The mind drifted without direction. Time no longer mattered. The night continued at its own gentle pace, uninterrupted. The cabin remained warm and steady. Walls held the quiet carefully, without movement or sound. Breathing stayed even. Slow in, slow out. Nothing else existed. The forest outside rested completely. Snow covered every surface, smoothing the world into calm simplicity. The ranger rested deeply, without thought or concern. The night carried everything it needed. Firelight dimmed slightly, still steady. The warmth remained gentle and constant. Silence grew softer, not empty, but full and reassuring. Sleep settled naturally, without effort. The body and mind released fully. The night continued peacefully. The forest remained still. Rest was complete.